Welcome to an episode of What Are You Reading? What Are You Writing? A place for readers and authors to come together and discuss books, any kind of book, fiction, nonfiction, professional. I mean, how fun is that? We hope that you will, as you listen in to today's episode, if you have thoughts, questions, ideas, things you want to share, you will just go to the website and KarenEOsborne.com and send us a message. I am Karen E. Osborne, and I am the author of Getting It Right and the upcoming novel Tangled Lies, which debuts on July 22nd of this year. And my guest today is Marianne Haggerty. Marianne is an avid and discerning reader, and it's so fun having to have an opportunity to talk with her about books. Hey, Marianne.
Hello, Karen. How are you?
I am great. Marianne and I have known each other for decades. We won't mention how many. We met years ago when we both worked in higher ed, and we've been friends and colleagues ever since. Marianne, what is the first book you would like to share with our audience?
I would like to share a book, The Vanishing Half by Brit, Bennett. The bare bones plot outline is that in a mythical town in the South, the town inhabitants, what they're trying to do is erase or erode whatever Blackness that they have in them. And the more appreciated group is the one that looks more and more white. Now, this doesn't save the parents in it because the father in the story is beaten up and lynched and in front of his daughters. His daughters are twin girls. And what they decide to do, having experienced this trauma, is what they do is they run away. So they've lost a parent, which is vanishing. The town folk are losing their Blackness. And then when they get to a town and they start working, the two girls, Desiree and Stella, Stella just leaves her sister. She's 16, she's in fear. And what they can do is they can pass, meaning they can pretend to be white with no repercussions. And so Stella takes off. So here's Desiree. She's lost a parent, a town, and her twin sister who doesn't tell her where she's going. And then it's a story of how the twin sisters, how their lives proceed. And what's beautiful is that we are in the South from the 30s to when they leave, and one goes to New Orleans and the other goes west. And the author, Bennett, she weaves in all these different historical events without being so pronounced that it feels false. You get to see the variety of time and place. And Stella, poor Stella, what she decides to do in her passing for white is what she decides to do is get the protection of a white husband who's well-placed. And she lives her life trapped by this knowledge that she could be found out at any time. And it's a story of her not coming to grips with this, but feeling this incredible loss. And the next generation, Kennedy, her daughter, feels this loss, this intergenerational loss and trauma, but Kennedy doesn't know why she has these dreams or feels that something is missing. And again, it's the half of her heritage. And then the other twin, Desiree, feeling abandoned, has a child with an abusive husband, but comes back to the town. And it's a story of her life. She was the one who wanted an education. And instead she works at a local store and eventually becomes partners with a man who finds people. His job is to be a detective of sorts. So it's a story of them interweaving their lives as the decades go by, and how they find each other after a fashion. And the beautiful part is that the daughters of the two sisters find each other and share pictures and knowledge about each other. And so finally, there's a joining of the halves.
Yeah. And it's, it's also, I read it too and loved this book and all of the vanishing
Yeah.
parts, the loss, but it also is about finding,
Yes.
about finding who you are. And I love the different characters that the sisters and the cousins,
Right.
the daughters of the twins, the different people that are in their lives, and so about when accepting who I am and who other people are. So it's about disappearing, and it's about finding self in a
Yes.
in a lot of ways. And of course, it's also about racism,
Yes.
and the
Deeply.
terrible price of of racism in this country. But nothing is heavy-handed. It's one of
Right.
the things I liked about it. I mean, it was an engrossing tale. It was a page-turning, wonderful story, and none of it was just like,
None of it, yeah, none of it was heavy-handed. Even as Stella becomes neighbors in the 60s with a Black family who integrates their neighborhood, not successfully. Um, even Stella tries to find her other half, but the experience of racism through the very beginnings, throughout their lives,
yeah,
the trauma and the intergenerational trauma.
intergenerational trauma. Yes.
Yes, is so well written and expressed. I never felt lectured to. What I felt was incredible empathy for how each person in this book tried to make his or her way as best they could.
Yeah. And, I think it's such a good book, both for the times, but also kind of timeless,
Yes.
because it's such a human story, as well as a story that speaks to so much of what's going on in this country still today. So very, very wonderful choice. And evidently we're not alone thinking that was a wonderful choice, because it's been on the bestseller list for so long.
I
So
know.
good, because that
Yeah.
doesn't always happen, does it? Why don't
No.
people love this book? So,
I I found it through my book club. We have a now virtual book club because I was in these times. I am sometimes hesitant to read a book that I think is going to be about trauma, and this is a year for trauma and racial trauma. Um, but it was so compelling and so beautiful about it didn't downplay the trauma, but it wasn't just about
yes.
that.
Yes, it's not unlike weeping every time I look at the news. I didn't weep reading the book. So that was a really good thing. Do you have another recommendation for us?
Yes, I am
Something you're,
not.
I'm sorry.
That's all right. I tend not to be a nonfiction reader. So what I look for in nonfiction is something that reads like fiction.
Mhm.
And this one that I'm going to recommend is a historical one. And the name of it is Every Drop of Blood. And it's by Edward, I believe it's Achorn, but it's Achon. And it's the 2 weeks before Lincoln's second inauguration, and then the 2 weeks after his
Hmm.
second inauguration up to his assassination. And it's the story, what it's beautiful is, it's the story of how he and the United States, eventually United States, um, come to grips with what he calls in his second inaugural address, that every drop of blood that has been spilled is because of our national sin of slavery.
Ah,
And what happens is you are thrust into this DC in the 1860s of mud and sewage and rain,
hmm.
and how his inauguration is set up, and the history of how he becomes the kind of leader he is, going from somebody who's not an abolitionist to eventually one who was, because Frederick Douglass gave him a hard time at different times.
Yes.
One of the most compelling things was the description of Andrew Johnson, his vice president. That wasn't his original vice president. He didn't win with Andrew Johnson, and you can see why. In the book, it describes accurately what a drunken sot Johnson was. He's loaded in the inauguration. They have to try to get him away. And so you can see how, after the horror of Lincoln's assassination, how we as a country didn't make out as well with Johnson's leadership. So I loved it.
That sounds wonderful. That's like a wonderful book. Now, you are a movie maven.
I am.
And I wondered if there was a book that you've recently read that you think would make a great movie.
Well,
Because the author wants to know. The author is like, yes, tell me who I should take my book to so I can have a movie. So
yes. Well, two. One is, one of my favorite books in the whole wide world was News of the World by Paulette Wilde. And you're the one who turned me on to that. And it now has become a movie with Tom Hanks, which I'm looking forward to seeing. In The Vanishing Half, I was trying to imagine, because it does read so vividly, I could easily see it becoming a movie. But I have found that after watching Bridgerton, I think you should take your idea to Shonda Rhimes.
yes.
I would take it to Shonda without a doubt, because she has access to quite a retinue of people, actors and actresses that I've never heard of. And
who are wonderful.
Oh, they're incredible.
Yes.
They're incredible. So I would get in touch with her. I wish, living out in LA, I wish I could say I'm connected to her, but
it's a big city. Big city.
And I did read regarding The Vanishing Half that Kerry Washington has bought the rights to it. So I hope that it does become a movie, because I am a movie maven.
Yes, that would be wonderful. Well, we want to thank you, all of you. Thank you, Marianne, and thank all of you for dropping in on What Are You Reading? What Are You Writing? And as mentioned earlier, you can be in touch with both Marianne and myself through my webpage, KarenEosborne.com. And just in the comment section, tell us what you thought, if you've read this book or any of the books that we've mentioned, or the wonderful movie that we've been watching on Netflix, any of those things. If you would like to just send your opinions or just share what you're reading, we would love to hear from you. Thanks, and see you next time.